Musa, moro de nebi. Nabala Musa, moro de nebi. Nabala Musa, moro de nebi.
Guess what? We are figuring out too. Yamma, yamma. Oh, I am. I know why this is a Jordan Namsa. Casso Corora, La Coma. What I don't know. Oh, Tinibenza, Taragama Tapuro, Tiagenga, Aba Imanizins, Nini, anyone, Titala Buma.
Nabala Musa, moro de nebi. 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 Nabala Musa, moro de nebi.
I know why
Ujai, and welcome to another episode of the Gate of Gates podcast. My name is Kenny this week, and I'm here with
Ibtehuti, Heqwabti,
Tutannen, Heqwabti.
All right, so before we get started, as always, a word from our sponsor, Saz Hot Sauce. Saz Hot Sauce began in 2007 when a small group of students traveling in West Africa were trying to think of ways to support charitable projects. One of the students traveling happened to be an artisanal hot sauce chef, and right there, Saz Hot Sauce was born. Since then, Saz Hot Sauce has been, it's kind of a mouthful when you say it too fast. Saz Hot Sauce has prided itself on making exceptional artisan hot sauces with high quality ingredients to support good causes. We continue to do this with the best and tastiest offering of sauce flavors to date, with a focus on supporting displaced families in the Fada and Gourma region of Burkina Faso with the revenue from our sales. Saz Hot Sauce. Get you some. Hey, I wasn't playing.
Whoa.
I wasn't playing.
Perfect.
That's not the first commonality that we've had, Kenibashu. Just saying, you know, we got good style too. Just saying.
Okay. So, how you guys doing?
Man, grateful to be here, man.
Yeah, pretty
Grateful to be
good.
here.
Pretty good. Always feeling good on a Gate of Gates day. Yeah, you know, it's just something about it.
Is it Friday?
Feels
End of the week?
energizing. Maybe it's Friday,
Okay.
but you know, there's just something about it.
Yeah, this week's been a doozy, but you know, we're all glad to be here. So on that note, before we get started, you know, as always, we want to make sure that we go ahead and pay our respects by acknowledging all of those things in the non-material, the ancestors, all of our ancestors who have brought us here and have guided us to this very moment, and all of your ancestors for having you be guided to watch this podcast today. Specifically, Nebnaba Lamusa Mora Denibig, Duao to the Makaru, for all of your sacrifices and all of the great things that you have brought to us in the West with this mission of Kebta. And all of those other ancestors who have supported and are still supporting the work that we're doing today. So yeah, with that, we're just gonna go ahead and get into rapid fire.
Let's go.
Let's do it. So normally I'm behind the camera doing this, but today you get to see. Today you get to see the actual guy behind the scenes. So rapid fire. We're gonna start international this week with Mali and Russia and international relations. So Mali is being sanctioned by the U.S. and other European forces due to their alignment with Russia and a mercenary group called Wagner. And essentially, they've been rebelling or going against the French colonial power in Mali. So they've removed French as their national language. They're removing the French NGOs, the media outlets, and these types of things, and the French military out of their country in Mali. So now the U.S. is coming in and basically saying, no, we disapprove of this. Now we're going to sanction you, which can hurt their trade, can hurt their economy, and things of that nature.
Yeah, it sounds like decolonization.
They're trying.
They're trying. You know, they're trying to get rid of the colonizer's language, the colonizer's culture, and they're trying to hone in on their own. And you know, the colonizer doesn't like that. It's also interesting though, is they come after Mali, they come after Russia, but they don't look into like the radical Muslims that have power in Ukraine. They don't look into that, because what's really happening there is like some serious socialism is happening that Putin is trying to stop. But the media likes to portray Russia as the enemy in all regards. Like if you look at Hollywood, even, like, you know, the Russians are always the bad guy. Always. The Chinese are always
stoic and mean and
always. And then the media is just another representation of Hollywood pushing that same agenda. So there's no way to look around it. There's no way to, like, you know, like what's behind this door right here, you know? But there's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I did a little bit of research on this, and it was just interesting to me, like, what the definition of a sanction really, like, even is. You know, it's just a order.
Right.
Like, sort of like a parent trying to discipline their child. Kind of like, you didn't do what I wanted you to do, So now I'm gonna take away your allowance. You know, and the specific sanctions, I looked into them. I think they were even just like, they were so broad that they could be applied to any person or anything, right? It's like general terms where like a person can't get specific things from another country. And it's just like, man, the kinds of like small slaps on the wrist that these imperialist powers are playing, you know, with each other is just like this petty, you know, super petty little, you know, children's game.
Yeah, I mean they've worked for so long to maintain a thumb on all of these countries, and now that a force like Russia and China is coming into Africa and trying to make more beneficial or more perhaps congruent deals, now it's like, okay, before it'd be like, okay, if Patrice Lumumba would rise up or Kwame Nkrumah would rise up, we can crush you pretty quickly because you don't have any other power behind you to support you. But now that Russia's stepping in, it's like, oh, now we got to deal with Russia if we deal with Mali, and that's a real, you know, real threat.
Yeah, having to deal with those superpowers is something else.
For sure. And next topic. So we have Young Thug.
Free Young Thug.
Free Young Thug, YSL, that whole situation. So if you don't know, him and his whole crew, his whole gang was basically indicted on a RICO charge.
Not gonna.
Well, for reasons. And one thing that came up in the trial was goat sacrificing and doing animal sacrifices.
Tradition.
And the lawyer wanted to essentially leave that out of the trial, but it came out that, you know, these goat sacrifices were basically used to harness the power of the animal for mystical power and, you know, for different spiritual attainment.
What?
So this is trying to be left out of the trial, but it's coming out.
That's I don't know what to say about that for real. That's crazy.
I mean, it sounds like someone knows a couple things about a couple things.
Yeah, like that's pretty crazy. I mean, you know, Thugger, if you're having those real, you know, problems and, you know, you're trying to do what you can to get out of that jam, you know, make sure you go to the right people. Make sure that you're actually doing some back research on what you're doing, you know, because that's kind of wild. Like if you are doing those kinds of things to try to kind of get out of a jam, and it's coming up in court, and it's
but I wonder if he was doing it before the situation, like just for his career.
I don't know. I doubt it. It's a very common thing that people start to get into those kinds of things when, you know, your back is up against the wall and you're just looking for any way to get out of a situation. It's not like you really approached it from a principled place. You know, like our ancestors did animal sacrifice. That's no
everyone did.
There's no mystery. Yeah,
everyone.
Our ancestors in general, you know, like humanity's.
Read the Old Testament
in the ancestry, right?
Yeah.
You know, so it's no surprise to hear that, you know, coming from our understanding as like indigenous initiates, it's not like surprising to hear that, but at the same time, the approach might be coming from a place of not really going about it in a principled way, but just being like, hey, like, I know a God that can do these things. And that's like, spirituality is really getting pimped out these days. You know, Master and I used to talk about like how you can't really put a price on, you know, spirituality. And people will try to come at us and be like, oh, well, you charge for classes and this and that, the classes should be free. And it's like, it's not about the money per se, right? It's about really enveloping yourself in what this culture has to offer, and because we're functioning as a, you know, organization within this beast, there has to be money involved. But that's not the goal, you know.
But it's interesting because everyone knows about the real spirituality, like especially like the elite. You know, the people in the music industry, the people in all of these, you know, industries that are trying to gain power, they just act like they don't. Like even Naba Irita said, you know, that Africa is like 90% religious, or, you know, 90% Christian and Muslim, and 10% traditional, but they're 100% traditional when they need to get something done. Exactly. And then they know where to get a chicken, and they know a grandma has got a chicken, you know?
That's how it be. All right, next topic. So we have palm.
We need to drop some more bombs, by the way, when, you know,
when the bars are dropping.
When we drop the mic, you know.
It's a build up. So we have palm payment technology coming to all U.S. Whole Foods, by the end of the year. I actually saw one of these in Brooklyn.
No.
Not too long ago.
So how does it work?
You just put your palm over like this scanner, and just to pay for your food to handle this.
So it takes a picture of your palm.
I'm not sure how the tech works itself.
So supposedly, right? There's no. This is the funny thing that they do, right? The way that it was presented on the news was they were saying that there's no identifying factors being given, like trying to say that like we're not taking pictures of your handprint or your fingerprints or anything like that. There's what the technology is doing is recognizing the vein patterns underneath the skin on your hand.
But how is that connected to your credit cards, though?
How's
that?
You have to do it first, like you have to come present your hand, and then they get the vein patterns,
it's
which
like
is an identifying.
Oh, I
So it's
see.
just like
So the card is linked to that pattern in your veins.
Exactly.
Oh,
Exactly.
wow.
Damn, what are the repercussions of that?
I don't.
It sounds like a good experiment to get us further into other technologies coming soon.
Why would they want our palms specifically?
I think it gets us used to us becoming technology. Like the whole transhumanism, like humans are now technology. Like we have things in our brain, we have technology in our skin, you know. So now when like they roll out like the Neuralink or other things, we're used to that now.
And supposedly, that came from a technology that was being used in the modern medical system to find veins on people, like to do injections or put in an IV or whatever. When a nurse can't find the vein, they'll use whatever that scanning technology is to find the vein.
Crazy.
So, just another development in the
Another one.
madness.
Crazy world.
Another one. So let's get into a slightly different topic. Westernization is not the answer. Artist Asiko explores Yoruba culture through mythology. So this dope artist is basically saying that he wants to appreciate his cultural heritage and imagine a better future by utilizing, his culture from Nigeria and imbuing that into his art. In a sense, almost decolonizing the art itself. His recent pieces or series are called Guardians of Myth and Legend, and they represent and explore the Yoruba deities or orishas. His name, Asiko, means time or the moment. So another, forward-thinking artist coming out of Nigeria.
Well, that's very interesting, though, right? Because, okay, he's talking about decolonizing the art. So, to begin with, like, how did you come to that conclusion, Asiko? Because if you are an artist, right, in this modern world, what are you're making art, right? So you're creating some sort of a depiction, but now are you deriving your goal for that art from what the Western, modern culture has taught you art is, and what's the purpose of that art? Because how can you decolonize art for real? It's always going to be art. And it's always going to be used for the same purpose. You're going to put it in a gallery, right? It's going to make it onto TV and yada yada, and then you're going to make some money. So the colonization will continue, right?
Right.
I mean, how far is that decolonization from the modern perspective really going to go?
Because what's like the end goal at the end of the day? Like, where is that money going? Like when the artist sells that piece of art, like whose pockets is that filling at the end of the day? It
is kind of interesting though, because don't get me wrong, I do understand the way that
art.
you lead people to a different thinking or a different way of thinking. If nobody ever is exposed to that kind of imagery, then maybe they never even think, in that direction. But, as far as what it leads back to, is it just going to make another artist that tries to decolonize art in their own way? Or is it going to lead that person to the actual traditions? Because Asiko, are you actually a part of the traditions of the Yoruba culture? Or are you just depicting these, making these depictions of these orishas? And we actually have a photo, Zawaz.
Can you pull
There's
that
a photo on the OBS
Of the art?
of some of his art. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the art itself, but Kenibashu begs a good question because, you really got to think about it. Like, what's really going on there? Like, what are you really doing at the end of the day? Like, with the art, because it could, like, saying something is decolonization. It's like, that's good clickbait.
That's true. It's true.
If you want good clickbait, you could just say that. But what are you really doing at the end of the day? And also, the idea of art is very interesting in the culture. It's a bit different. Like, and we're going to get into that today, but it's a little bit different from the way that we perceive it.
So yeah, definitely. Is the images on the screen?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. It's cool.
Yeah, it's a step. It's not the solution, but it's a step to at least refine or reform what's currently there. But we still have to go further to actually, again, embodying the culture that's on the picture in our actual lives.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When does it become less about the pictures or the art? And when does it actually become about the culture? You know what I'm saying? Because that could be the perversion for forever. And it's been a perversion, like, in American culture for forever. Or even just, internationally as a part of different cultures, where you make art about things to push forward a narrative that you're changing something, but you're not actually going towards the culture or whatever that message is, that you're pushing.
Right. Even in the pyramids, there were hieroglyphs, like the Sphinx, like all of those pieces of imagery. Like, they weren't just for art's sake. Like, they had a purpose. They told a story. There was a reason for it, They had a goal in mind, It looks great. It looks beautiful. Like, yeah, you could look at it in awe, but there was a goal at the end of the day.
Shout out to Matt Ruta in the comments. He asked, what's better, decolonization or re-indigenization? And what's the difference?
Matt Ruta.
That's a question right there.
Thanks for coming back, bro.
I mean, you asking the question presents the answer, Matt. I appreciate it. That really is the question.
Yeah.
So,
Decolonization or
indigenization.
Can I just say, I think re-indigenization is like the answer for decolonization, because everyone wants to decolonize, but they don't know what it is. They don't know what the goal is at the end of the day. Like, re-indigenization is like the answer for all of it at the end of the day. It's like, you got to go back. You got to go back to the village. Because you got to go back to, like, being, like, under the tree, like, having the elders, like, give you that wisdom under the tree,
Because what is indigenous, right? It's returning to nature. That's our home, regardless. We always have to come back home at some point. And to decolonize, and then, so let's say you remove the colonial mindset and culture, then what do you have left? Like, are you going to be an empty slate? Are you going to have anything to fill what you removed? And that's the question.
Yeah. Next topic.
All right, so back to the art. So we have, Seiko trying to integrate culture into the art, but then now we have AI, which is trying to mass generate the art. And so Lenza, AI portrait app, is all over social media. You've probably seen people making their faces into different cool art pieces and that kind of thing, changing their image. And things like, we have stable diffusion, we have...
There was like a trend on Instagram at one point where everybody was posting like the AI versions,
of
like
themselves.
different versions of themselves.
Like my warrior self.
Exactly. So all these image generators are, really picking up steam, and not just for social, but also in corporate spaces as well. And also artists are now using these things too. But there's a backlash coming against these apps for basically stealing the
Did you just say blacklash?
Yeah, little slip up.
I don't think he meant to say
backlash coming against a lot of these artists. I mean, these systems for stealing the work of artists, for stealing their images, stealing their style to portray. So now there's like an ethical battle. Is it ethically appropriate to take these artists' work without paying them? And this is coming up more and more.
I mean, for me, specifically because I am a photographer, it's been really interesting, like, trying to navigate that space, and even just my thoughts about it. Of course, at first it's like, well, why would I ever put my creativity in the hands of a robot? Like, how does that even add up? What's the point of me trying to do anything if I could just give the task to a robot. So it's kind of like, you know, a catch-22, because I do see beautiful things coming from it. You know, even the guy Asiko that we was talking about earlier, he partly used AI, you know, to create those images. But he's also a photographer.
Right.
And it's just like, I myself personally, I see a lot more value in putting your hands into any kind of work that you're doing, you know, fully, and making sure that you can take every step that you can to make it come out to be what you want it to be. Because as soon as the option comes to make it easier for you, that's when you sort of lose the value of all of like the hard work that's not even just you have done, but those before you have done, to make sure that you could get results, like just with your own, you know, 2 hands, and, you know, making it work. So it's a weird space, man.
But it's interesting what you're saying, even Kenibashu, because you're saying you want to like use your own hands to make it what you want to be, right? So like you're even a photographer, right? But like everything in nature is like becoming at the end of the day. So in a way, it's kind of like you're trying to, even as a photographer, you're still using, your medium is still, you know, photography, but you're using technology at the end of the day to snap the shot.
That's true.
So in a way, you're kind of making it what you want to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, in a way.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting with art and photography because it's trying to capture a moment. Things like music and video capture, you know, a process, or like and like never ends almost. But to capture a moment and to have, I think it captures perspective. And I think that's the thing that's so important about art, is that, or at least in the modern system, is that it captures like how you see the world, or how you envision that tree, or how Van Gogh envisioned the night that when he drew it in that moment. Right. And it might not be an accurate representation, you know, that's a whole nother conversation, but at least you knew like it came from that person. And I can say, oh, now I have insight into how they think, or how they view the world. But now with AI, it's like,
Yeah, I mean, on the topic of the AI though, it's just weird, man. It goes into a really weird place where this whole agenda of having people, and it started very, 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 very long ago, you know, and it's still very prevalent today. You can see it if you go sit in on a class at a kindergarten, and, you know, they'll ask the kids, what do you want to be? You know, rather than letting them know what we need as a community, and when you grow up, the problems that are going to be, you know, in front of you, you know, and being able to build their skills in those, you know, arenas. They just ask them what they want to be, and a child is a free spirit. They can imagine being anything, you know. So there's a man, we talked about on the last episode, he made himself into a dog. You know, he spent $15,000 on a suit.
It's wild.
To make himself look like a dog, because he wanted to, you know, just live that life. So this AI app, Lenza, making
it's an
people,
evil world out there.
you know,
I'm gonna start being that button if you don't start pushing it.
Sensational.
It's an evil world we live in.
there we go. both words.
right. But yeah, this app in specific actually even had some backlash because they were saying that some people would put their photos in, and then what they got out was like a more sexualized,
Women especially, right?
version of themselves. Yeah, women especially. So it just becomes a very like slippery slope. You know, we can't. I personally really just don't think that we can depend on AI to be a valuable resource for a civilization. That's when we're gonna become uncivilized. We're not gonna have to rely on actual like values and principles as human beings that make us good people. Yeah. If we're just able to give the work to do to a robot.
Yeah. I talk to a lot of people that work in AI and work on those technologies, and I always ask them, you know, does ease really make us better? Does the ease of having AI to do things, and it's interesting because they never thought about it. Like, they just work in these industries kind of blindly and think, oh, you know, like, this is intelligence, or this is like the pinnacle of humanity, and we have reached, you know, something that no one's ever reached, and the pyramids were built by aliens, and we know this, and the government has told us, and we believe it. But honestly, it's like people don't really think about it. Like, you know, these things are inhibiting us from, like, you know, really like putting our hands into the soil, literally.
It's like an inversion of values. It shows like in the West, we're about what do we do externally. Like, oh, we got more work done with this technology. Oh, we were able to accomplish the goal of making a better business or making more money or a better technology, you know, new tool. But then the real value would be like ourselves. Like, oh, we became better. We became more intelligent. We became more, you know, resilient. So we're sacrificing like those value systems. Like, a job makes us get more done, but we become less in the process, and it's really unfortunate.
Yeah, that's interesting. Does that really like make us better just because our productivity has gone up? Does that mean that like the value of our
productivity towards what?
Yeah, and is the value of the work still as good ultimately? You know what I mean? Like, I even, you know, it's just like you got to ask those questions, because really, like, AI really started to you know, really come into the picture during COVID. You know, like just like a couple of years ago, and you kind of started to hear about it, and you know, and then now it's like really starting to take over ChatGPT, like all of these tools, like Adobe's using it, everybody's using it now, and like, where is that going? And slowly you're starting to see people losing their jobs to AI, and like, you know, where is that taking us at the end of the day? Like, everyone talks about it, especially people in the industry. They're like, oh, well, you know, there's an ethic behind it, or, you know, it's never going to get out of control. We got this. That's like the the most famous last words is "we've got this." Right, like, it's under control. Don't worry. It's never going to get out of. Yeah. Wait and see. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's the classic story, man. Happened in the Matrix. Yada yada yada, all over.
Every sci-fi movie.
Exactly.
Literally, right?
So art, though. I think we should get to like what the root of, like, what is art? You know.
Before we go there, we got a few more rapid fire topics, right?
Yeah. I think so. What's going on?
Hold on.
We used to do a 90-second segment with these rapid fires.
I kept it quick today. I kept it pretty short.
We even cut it down.
Rapid fire had to change though, man, because some of the stuff was good.
Yeah. Listen, if you have any suggestions about our podcast, please put it in the chat. We'd love to hear about it. We'd love to hear what you want.
Let us know.
I have a topic actually that came in not too long ago.
Okay.
From one of our producers. Shout out. The new age. So, you know, in English, definitions are constantly changing. And apparently now within the new age definition on the internet, shout out to AI, they've included African spiritual practices within that umbrella of new age.
What?
Yeah, so it's expanding now to encompass.
Oh wow! It took me a minute to even register what you just said. So they're trying to take traditional indigenous African spirituality and group it together with like new age spirituality. Wow.
That's like calling it satanic. That's like its way of like kind of pushing it to the side. That's how like religion says, oh, that's like the devil worship. Or, this is new age. It wasn't before religion. It was after. Like, what the
new age?
I mean, that's wild. That's wild. But just yet another effort of science, religion, and politics to push aside what we know came before all of this, this modern madness. Is completely evident that, like, come on, there's pyramids, man, there's a Sphinx, there's things that people still marvel upon and don't know how they were done because they don't go to those people who are per se derivatives of that civilization, and just humble yourselves and be like, hey man, how y'all do that? Right. And then if they tell you it's going to take a whole lifetime for you to figure it out, you just figure it out in the time that it takes to figure it out.
And just to touch on what Kenibashu is saying, like, and we've mentioned this in past episodes before, but our understanding of science, religion, and politics is that, like, behind closed doors, like, they all shake hands and they're all, like, in cahoots with each other. But in public, you'll see that science, religion, and politics really, like, separate themselves or act like they're kind of against each other or, like, at wits with at each other's ends. But at the end of the day, like, all of those three things are, like, together. They're one. Which is wild.
So one of the other topics was U.S. citizens needing to pay for a visa to travel to Europe starting in 2024.
Dang. Can't just travel anymore.
I mean, you funny.
Don't.
Nah, I mean it's like, real remedial, but it's like people from Europe had to get a visa to come to America, didn't they?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like whatever.
It's balancing the playing field.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think I read a Reddit thread about it, and they were saying like it's just reciprocation for the many years that people have had to.
Our time is coming in America. We have a lot of debt for our actions and actual literal debt as well. So it's eventually the things that we put out will come back to us.
The last one, and this one was actually very interesting. I looked into it a little bit. A shocking video shows South Africa's black party singing "Kill the Boer" or the whites, or "Kill the white farmer." Zawaz, can you cue the video up? We can still talk about it. While the video's playing. But essentially, there's this group called the EFF. I think it's called the Economic Freedom Fighters in South Africa, and there was like some sort of a rally or something where they all came together. It was like a stadium full of these people, all wearing red and black, by the way. Like all wearing red shirts.
War.
Like
Negativity.
It's crazy. So yeah, there's this song that they're singing. Let me pull this up. So there's this song that they're basically all singing, and shout out to Elon Musk real quick, because he jumped on Twitter after this happened and said that they were openly...
He's South African.
Exactly. Yeah. So he was saying that they are openly pushing for genocide of white people, because the song is basically it's called Dubul Ibunu. It translates from the Xhosa and Zulu language.
That's a Xhosa, by the way.
Hey, you said it right.
I was in South Africa.
You said it right.
I've been to South Africa.
It translates to shoot the Boer or kill the Boer.
Shoot the Boer.
Which is a controversial anti-apartheid South African struggle song. And the song has been criticized as being hate speech and racist. Basically, the Boers are the descendants of the Dutch-speaking free burghers from the Eastern Cape frontier in southern Africa during the 17th, 18th, and 19th centuries. And basically, it's kind of like a slave song, basically, because apartheid was it's just about segregation. It's like literally segregation just happening in a different place and having a name that comes from a different language. It's the same exact thing. So they ended up coming out with this song. Like when they would see cops, they would say, that's the Boer.
Kill the pig,
Right, kill the pig. It's the same exact thing as what we had in America with the civil rights movement and everything that branched off from that. So it was just very interesting to me that Elon Musk said that they're openly pushing for genocide of white people in South Africa. Openly being the specific word that makes it interesting to me. Because what's covert about all of the efforts of all of these Western powers or these superpowers that go into other countries and commit genocide? Well, because they don't openly have these conferences and have songs about it, it's not a problem. Right? It's about politics. Then politics gets involved, and America's always right. We can put together an army of thousands and go into another place, bomb cities, kill women, children, all of that, innocent bystanders that are just in the area, and that's not considered a genocide.
Yeah, it's all a problem. But I think the biggest, there are many problems, but one of the problems is oftentimes a group of people will get colonized, and then that group of people will, over time, turn around and do exactly the same thing that the colonizer did to them. They'll become the colonizer, and they will think that maybe because they had some sort of oppression or some sort of victimization, or they have some sort of emotion surrounding that particular topic or whatever they're going through, that it justifies them colonizing other people.
J. Cole has a great song called High for Hours where he talks on that directly. But yeah, that's the unfortunate reality where like the people who colonize us also educate us, and so it's very easy to then replicate their actions because that's what we know to do. That's what we've seen being done. That's power. That's power. That's authority.
Yeah.
So it repeats itself.
That's a good point. Shout out to Mali for getting rid of the French language from Mali. Like
that's
that's how you do it.
That's big.
Like in South Africa has such a deep history, right? Like in the universities and the schools, like they taught everybody Afrikaans, which they considered the oppressor's language, and it was, or like languages like Xhosa, that was like, you know, outlawed, that wasn't allowed, you know.
Kadri's Eamon over here, you going in with the facts today.
No, I mean, I went to South Africa, Igama Lam Dingu Allen. I learned a lot from you know, the
just
people there.
Stuff out there.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, even when I was there, I was 18 years old, and we were in Guguletu, which is a village in South Africa. It's near Stellenbosch, which is the wine country. It's like this very like prevalent white area. There's Stellenbosch University, and you know, it's like, it's kind of hard to get in there if you're a person of color, you know. Or even like the way that we talk about color is different in South Africa. Like they don't consider themselves necessarily black. It's like colored. They call themselves colored. It's like
This is crazy.
It's different. It's different. So wait, I was in Guguletu, and I was 18, and it was like a high school extension program that I went on. And you know, we were building schools, and we were like teaching kids how to use the internet and stuff like that. But in a way, it was interesting because we had a teacher, and we didn't like this teacher very much. But she was just like this white lady from England, and she was telling us how, you know, these poor villagers don't have any humility, and they live all together in these huts, and how like they couldn't put the villagers into houses because they're not accustomed to living in houses or homes necessarily. So they're like, oh, well, we'll build one wall, and then we'll build another wall, and another wall, and another wall, and slowly, like, you know, they'll just get used to it, which is just another form of colonization at the end of the day. It's just like a slow process.
So they try to make a concentration camp.
Right, and even looking back at it now in hindsight, I had a lot of great experiences there, but really, like, I was just a part of this tool of colonization at the end of the day, where, you know, people, like, kids go to South Africa, you know.
Were you there with like Peace Corps or something like that?
It was kind of like that. It was similar, yeah. But you go there and like to make yourself feel good about yourself, like you're painting a school or like hugging a African child or something like that.
Yep.
You know, you're not really going into the village and like you know, living there and like eating and being accustomed to their tradition and stuff. We would go back, you know, to the university at the end of the night. You know what I mean? We weren't staying there. Like,
right.
You know, it made us feel good, but like it wasn't really like necessarily doing good for us because we were getting them away from their tradition. Because they're in the high schools, they have the internet, they have all these tools, and while that might seem really good for some people, you know, it's really like you're really like taking away that culture from them. You're teaching them English. You're teaching them to like, oh, the guy was like, one of the kids there, I became really good friends with him. He's like, yeah, I want to go to New York. I want to leave this village and everything and, you know, leave the tradition at the end of the day.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And we call it charity, right? It's interesting.
And then we call it charity.
Exactly.
Right.
Giving them something that they
have everything they need. Those kids, they're happier than anybody here in the West. Anybody here is fighting for a square inch here in the West.
But then it's about, you know, convincing them that they're not happy.
Right. Or convincing them that they need more.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So, oh, okay.
Got some questions in the chat.
Somebody backstage is.
Hey, Kim Warrior.
Okay, let me see. Kim Warrior, what's your opinion at current event in West Africa? Kim Warrior, you gotta like do better with your questions, man. Sometimes
we already talked about Mali.
There's a lot going on.
Yeah.
I saw this president, the new president of Burkina Faso, recently. I think Tutisa posted on the story. He's 35 years old, the youngest president or leader currently in an African country.
Yeah.
And he's really talking about why is it that we have all the resources, we have everything that we need, this abundance in our nation, but yet we're the ones that constantly don't have anything for ourselves. Like, we need to be able to use our own things for us and empower ourselves. So, you know, they're getting bold. People are getting, you know, they're speaking out, you know, quite a bit these days. So I do sense if they can maintain this, you know, and this is where Russia and China comes in again, because he's talking about having more alliances with countries that are more beneficial to their needs.
Right.
So we'll see how it plays out.
Right, because they're taking all of the resources from the motherland. They're taking the uranium, they're taking the iron, they're taking the wheat, they're taking the fossil fuels, everything, and they're shipping it to the rest of the world. You know?
And then they package it up into a product and sell it back to the same people. You know, it's crazy.
Yeah. So that was the only question, right? Also, may we state today's topic so that, this is Matt Roots is saying, also, can we state today's topic? Right on time, Matt. So today's topic, you know, that we'll break off into now is really just like art, right? What is art? And, you know, let's explore the roots of art, you know, not just in this Western context, but what we know about art, right? Ibtehuti, where you going? This guy just going places and stuff. So, yeah, because, you know, even when we got into the topic of the AI and this artist, Asako, you know, art itself, craftsmanship, you know, where does that really have its roots, right? And why do we do it the way that we do it today? Why is it prioritized in our culture? Why is it so important? So, since you asked the question earlier, Tutannen, what would you say art really is?
Like what it really is, like how it is now.
Okay, like let's start with Western culture.
Okay.
What is it here? Like,
so yeah, we can start from the now.
Yeah.
Well, it seems like how we, you know, there's so many. First of all, there's so many different mediums, right? It seems like to be a form of individual expression. You know, some people would say like, I'm good with, I like color, I like aesthetic, I like how shapes work. So they might do art and digital design and these types of things. Some might be like, I love how music makes me feel and how it makes me move and how it makes me dance, and how this artist, their lyrics spoke about my situation when I was a kid. So now this artist is like, you know, a hero to me. You know, it's about personal expression. You know, trying to find, you're seeking something. Like you have a question, like what is life really, or what is race, or what is, you know, what does it mean to be American? And then through your questioning, you try to find a answer through imagery or through energy or through feeling or through something that you can put into the world, because the words aren't enough sometimes. So I think art serves as a way for us to communicate what we don't have the words for in the Western society, especially speaking these limited languages and limited culture where we don't have enough to feed our spirits, to feed our souls, or our minds.
Tutannen is such a poet.
Now you light the bomb up. Now,
what's wrong with what Tutannen said?
I'm just saying.
Dang,
you gotta balance.
Okay, talk for 30 seconds.
Your turn.
What was the question?
What is art like in today's, you know, climate or culture? What would you say that art really is? You know?
Yeah, I took a very uppity art class in college, and the understanding that we got of art at the end of the day was that art, like Tutannen was saying, art is subjective, right? Or at least the way that we consider it here in the West. Like, you know, it's about emotion, or it's about this, or it's about that, or no one can tell you, like, that art is, like, objective, or there's, like, oh, this is a standard of beauty. Like, the standard, it's, like, it's different for everyone, really. But then that kind of gets muddled a little bit, because then you can have, like, found art, for instance. Like, you can have art that's, like, I don't know, like a pair of glasses on the floor of a museum. And that could be a piece of art. I think there was like a TikTok video. Somebody put something in the museum, like on the floor, just to see if people would react to it. And then like they were like, it's art. But it was just somebody just threw something on the floor.
Right.
But that just goes to show that it's like, under the standards of the guise of how we consider art in the West, especially modern art, like it's really like, you can be fooled into thinking that something is art when really it's just drawn by like a 4-year-old. And is that art? Like something like a 4-year-old's drawing that you put on your refrigerator? Some people would say that it is. So.
One time I was doing a photo shoot, and the lady actually had a piece of art in her apartment, and it was actually by like a 6-year-old, something like that. It was a young kid. And it was basically a depiction of the sun rising. Right. Mm-hmm. And what he named it was a little bit of nighttime and a little bit of morning. Okay. And I was like, man, that's so artistic. Who is this little kid? Yeah. Because his intelligence was so like present in that moment. Because that's really what it is. That's really what sunrise is. It's like the ending of the night and the beginning of the morning. And but that was, if I really look at that moment and think about it, it's like that's just my Western mind going off the assumption that anything and everything is art. Yeah. And I can find a way, if I like it enough, to make it so relevant to something, and make it seem significant. I've seen art installations of people's living room or their bedroom, like as an expression of what it means to be tired. But how does that benefit the community or the society as a whole, at large? Does that really do anything for us? Where's the benefit in that? Right.
When does it become a distraction, right? Or when does it become unnecessary information? But
the question really is, how did we get to that point? Because who placed the value there?
That's the real question.
How did the art installation like that? Somebody could sell their bedroom, their bedroom in a room, in a white room with a red velvet rope around it. They could sell that installation for thousands of dollars. Yeah. And that's the value that's actually placed on that, installation. Like, how did we get to that point?
Well, oftentimes, if you look at people that have made it to the top, people that have made it to the top of their industry, and if you ever ask them how they got there or what they had to do to get there or who they had to do to get there, then you'll find out what the agenda really is. Because
it's an evil world we live in.
Exactly, because it's not about the art at the end of the day. It's about the agenda behind the art. And that's something that's often, that we often don't look at, is what was the agenda behind the art.
That's a good point.
How did we get here? Because it's interesting because, like, you might be talented, you might be out there making music or something else, and then you might be looking at somebody who's famous, somebody who made it big, and you're like, how did they get there? Right. Like, they're not that good. Exactly. They're not as talented as me. And there might be other factors too. Maybe they're more consistent, whatever. But then there's something behind that curtain, that black curtain. There's something behind that industry as well. There's something that we don't necessarily like all know about until we get there. And then when we get there, we have to make that decision for ourselves. Like, am I going to, do this thing that I need to do to get to where I am, or am I going to be Lauryn Hill?
Or Dave Chappelle.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Or am I going to go back to Africa?
I mean, that's the big question you're bringing up right there. Like, the big point of, like, where is it taking us? Like, where are these different trending artists and, the Basquiats and whoever it is, the artists that are heroes in the society, like, why are they put on that level? And does culture inform art? Does art inform culture? Like, where is, like, you know, where's the guiding force in that whole conversation?
Or why do they die young?
Because even looking at American history, even propaganda is a form of art, if you could look at it that way, because you're framing the narrative again, trying to paint a picture in our minds of how the world is. And like, oh, that one makes sense. That one gets me excited. That one gets me mad. Let's go to war, you know?
Right.
Same with, like, you know, maybe it might be like a Playboy Cardi song.
Yeah.
I get mad. I want to go to war.
Hype.
I want to go to war.
Did you guys know that Breakfast was based on propaganda?
I think I saw
Just a quick
Instagram
sidebar.
reel about that. It's not TikTok.
It was like the father of advertisement or something like that.
Breakfast.
He like made breakfast.
I think you said Brexit. I was like, wait. Oh yeah,
Bro.
to sell more meat, right?
To sell, yeah, exactly. He had a conversation with, you know, the the executives of the meat industry, to, you know, increase the sales. So he just came up with a whole like advertisement for breakfast when nobody
That's
was
crazy.
eating. Nobody. It's not even about breakfast though. It's about this American breakfast, right? The bacon.
Yeah.
The eggs,
Everything.
the pancakes,
Propaganda.
the orange juice,
All
the
of it.
milk,
Everything.
all of it, propaganda, but somebody's work of art at the end of the day.
This is a good point. And back to your point about propaganda, it's like, and you're listening to hip hop, right? You're listening to rap. Like, what is it really saying? Because the most prevalent rap is not about, like, you know, family, or it's not about like bringing communities together, or like J. Cole, or you know, things that he's doing now. Like, it's about like murder. It's about fucking your bitch. Like, it's about, like, you know.
Okay.
I like bleep that out.
About that life.
Well, I'm the one who has to upload these at the end, and then I'm like, is this explicit? And then I'm like, I have to listen to every part. I'm like, did he just say that? But, like, you know what I mean? Like, there's an agenda behind that.
And
Like,
it's big business too.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because they're appealing to the kids at the end of the day, and everyone's hot, you know?
You know, I saw a video, because you brought up hip hop. You know, it's very interesting how a lot of people will hold on to hip hop and, you know, sort of make that like their saving grace as being like a black person in America, and, you know, how it has so much in its roots. And I actually reposted something today. There was a video of some African country where they were basically doing dances that are, you can tell, like, you can tell 100% that that's where b-boy dance came from. Right? They're spinning on their heads, they're doing all the steps, they're doing backflips, all that stuff, and you can tell like 100% that that's where b-boying came from. Now the question becomes, right, because somebody that is underneath the pressure of colonialism and thinking in a colonial way is going to see that and say, hey, Juneteenth, we're gonna have a hip hop, you know, we're gonna recognize hip hop with some sort of dance and yada yada, and then they're gonna say, you know, you can't have hip hop without Africa, and then they're gonna, you know, put their fist up and they're gonna make it about Africa, but they're not gonna make it about Africa in the way where it's like, well, the question is, why were they doing that in the first place? And why don't we do it for the same reason? Now we do it to hip hop music, right? We're doing it to the break beats in America, but the place where it came from, the place where we sort of got it from, what was the reason that they were even doing that? How did it come about that there was this group of people somewhere in one of these tribes that decided that these were, or did they decide that those were the dances that needed to be done?
It's like one of those strange things where it's like the memory of who we are is in the blood. So it wants to manifest itself in some way. So like when we see hip hop, it's like, oh, I remember something like this, and it like wakes up. It's like, oh, I can move like that. Oh, I can talk like that. I can flow like that. You know. But then again, we don't have the spiritual education or the spiritual context in America to even apply it to something.
Well, it's just like the beat. There's something about the beat. There's a language in the beat. That's what the you know, the tradition really understands. There's a language in the beat. Like, there are specific beats and
you earned that one.
Thank you. There are specific beats and specific patterns that convey language, and that's something that we don't necessarily. We feel it, like when we listen to a track. Oh, like this feels good, or there's that 808. There's that kind of like animalistic, like guttural kind of feeling when you hear that, you know. But you don't even know. Like the 808 is kind of like, that's a dark thing. And we think of it as like, oh, it's dope, like it feels good, but like we don't even know where that 808 comes from, or like what that does to us instinctually. You know what I mean? Like back to, you know, when we're talking about like music, where like you're talking about topics like murder, you're talking about topics like having a peace, or all those things. It's like, what are you really saying in that? What you're really saying is like, you want families where like the father isn't alive, where the father isn't there, because he's out there like shooting it up or doing whatever he's doing because he's listening to these tracks. He's not listening to Afrobeats. You know,
we're trying to learn the language that's in those songs, right?
Yeah, we're trying to understand like what it is about the music or what it is about Meek Mill's music that's making him like gassed up or whatever. He's just like living the life, and that, you know, maybe that person doesn't know any better, but it's just like, that's just the tool. It's just like the agenda behind it. There's so much, like, it's really like a form of colonization if you think about it. Like music, art, like the way we commodify it in the West, it's like colonization at its best, and it's so easy and so simple
because everything fits into it, right? Because, you know, artistic expression could go anywhere, but there's only so many places for it to go in a culture that's defined by politics, religion, and
science.
There's only so far like that you can go within a society that's built on those three pillars. You'll never go beyond, because like the way that hip hop has sort of transformed, you know, you got like I don't know how many people know this. I just found out about this young guy the other day, Didi Osama. He's like this wild little dude from New York. He's like 16, and he likes. This is one thing I can't deal with like the new music. They just scream. They're just like yelling.
You're such an old head.
The whole time. No, it's crazy. Like I feel old now saying it now. But it's like I don't know. It's weird, man. It's like a weird thing that they have now. But all of his music is pretty much about finding the ops, right? And, you know, cleaning up the block,
popping it off,
you know, like shooting somebody and yada yada. And it's like, how are all of the children who are listening to Didi Osama, because he's a child himself, right? He's 16 years old,
right.
And he's talking about these things. How is any child that's listening to Didi Osama on a normal basis? This guy's millions of views,
right?
Like millions.
Yeah.
How is
But why?
Exactly.
But why?
Exactly.
You know, because if you really think about record labels, like if you really think about the music industry, like a record label is really just all they really do is market your music. All they really have is the money to market your music. So they could take any form of music. They could take positive music if they wanted to, but they're not. There's a reason they're taking certain types of music with certain types of agendas and pushing it and pushing those numbers. Because here's the thing about YouTube, they're paying for those views. There may be some there may be some views out there that are real and natural.
That's true.
But they're paying for those views, and they want to get that out there, because at the end of the day, if you got a 16-year-old who's talking about popping off with the cops, what you're really doing is you're appealing to people's emotions. And when you have people's emotions, you have them.
Boom.
He's earning them now.
Let's go.
He was asking for them earlier, but now
Keep
he's
it going.
earning
Keep
them.
it going.
I'm frozen.
No, that's
No,
good.
but-
Can I,
go
let's go a bit deeper into that too, because if we're looking at hip hop culture again, because there's a power behind it. It's harnessing people's spiritual power. It's harnessing people's genius. And, you know,
That's a big statement.
it really is.
It's true, though.
Because, you know, they'll say, oh, this 19-year-old kid, he doesn't have a father, he doesn't have a upbringing that was conducive to, like, living a better life. But he has a talent, he has an ability. Cool, we'll give you $1 million if you fund our companies by talking about this. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Or if you talk about what...
But they won't word it that way, but that's what they're saying.
That's what's happening. Right. So now the culture is based around what? The liquor companies, the drug companies, incarceration, like the prison population, that's a big business as well. Yeah. So now it's like, okay, cool. Hip-hop has invested in those companies and in those industries. So we're going to find black people who have been influenced by this culture and allow them to advertise it for us. And that's where the genie in the bottle situation. And the contract, the bottle is the contract in this situation right here.
Yeah,
we'll tell that one. At the end, the genie in the bottle. That's
I mean, most of the musicians that are popular, like we fund a lot of, and we like a lot of musicians that are like destructive. Like, we love that destructive element to them. Like, who were you talking about? You were talking about Cardi before, remember?
Mm-hmm.
Playboy Cardi.
Yeah, he's destructive. Like, he's on
his
that.
music has got so I like him in the beginning.
I like it too. Like, I like it
in
in
the
the
beginning.
I like it though.
But
I listen
now,
to it.
I'm not listening to
his live shows are so dark, bro.
Yeah,
It's
I'm
crazy.
not religious, but like, people didn't like when Kanye went religious.
Yeah.
People didn't like that. Some
I
people were
didn't
like, it was like the gospel. We want the old Kanye. Yeah, but I'm just saying, but like, even an artist that wants to take it there or wants to go there, they're ostracized by the industry because of that. Oh, it's religious. It's he's an old head. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he doesn't know what he's talking about.
Yeah.
But he has some components that make sense. The religious side, maybe not so much, but he's starting to get it.
But it's even interesting with the Kanye case because it's only because he wasn't doing that the whole time. There's plenty of Christian artists who getting that money.
That's true. But they're in a certain band. They're in a certain band. They can't leave that lane.
Exactly.
They can't leave that lane. They're in that southern lane, in that country lane, in
That's
that
it.
Christian lane.
But I wanted to sort of change the trajectory of the talk. I'm gonna address some of these things in the comments first. Okay, so Matt was asking, was it the modern artist that challenged what art was as an FU to society after neoclassical art that was big in Europe?
What's neoclassical?
Wait, say it again. Say that one more time.
Was it modern artists that challenged?
Can you check what neoclassical art is?
Art. I mean, just based on the word itself, it's like a contradiction. It's like trying to say that something is new and classical at the same time. Like new, but pulling most of its influence from what has come before.
Mozart's in the box and all that kind of stuff, reforming it.
Yeah. But there's no way to not. You can't make anything in the present time without having it be influenced by previous time. There's no way around that. So technically the question, that part of the question, it doesn't really hold much, weight. But I haven't done much research on that, Matt, so I can't really answer that question.
Can you read it one more time?
Was it modern artists that challenged what art was as an FU to society after neoclassical art that was big in Europe?
After
Wait, I think so.
Classicism was an art movement sought to evoke the style of classical antiquity in writing, painting, sculpting, and architecture found rooted in world culture.
So are you saying like how modern artists are kind of breaking the mold in a sense and trying to almost through experimentation challenge or rebel against the standards of the classical era? If so, I could see that being a thing where, especially like in this like the 60s time period, 60s to the 70s, where like there was such a radical transformation of people really pushing the boundaries of like what art means or music is.
But
before it was very like rigid. It was like more like this is how this works. This is like the standard.
Yeah, but like for what purpose though, right? At the end of the day, because like in the 60s, it was about like, free love and drugs and and all of that, being a hippie, what was the agenda behind that back then,
Again, I think it goes back to not having the means for actual revolution. Like if people that's what they have, because art is so influential. We grow up on entertainment our whole lives, so like that's the medium that we see to as like, oh, I can bring change through this. Bob Marley can bring change through his music, you know.
Right.
Michael Jackson can bring change through his music, but you know, again, it doesn't fully have the full effect that we look for. But it gives us a sense of empowerment or a sense of like, you know, we're doing something, and it might spark another mind down the line. What y'all doing?
It's a
I had a
bug.
bug on me.
Had a bug.
How dare he?
It's a bug's life.
Matt Ruta always also said, artists said, oh, you think realistic paintings is art? Here's something that looks blurry, and then you get a Monet.
Challenging the norm.
Exactly. Kim Warrior was asking, what is spiritual art according to your organization? We'll get there. It's a good question, Kim Warrior. Angela Rester is saying, maybe there's more than one reason why those moves are used. I'm guessing she's referring to the hip-hop, the b-boy thing. Those moves can have more than one function. She also said all cultures are built on those three pillars. Challenge, Angela. Because if we're talking about colonization, right, a lot of the word that keeps coming up is decolonization, right? In these modern times when a lot of people are waking up to the realization that, you know, colonization is where we get a lot of, like, it's everything. It's all around us. It is everything that we are. But the one thing that, you know, some people forget to mention in that conversation is that the system itself has to function with people. Like, it doesn't function without people who are perpetuating its values, right? You are the system to a certain degree, and you will always play into it. Like, it's like the Matrix, right? You just a part of the program until you realize that, like, it's a program. And then when now you have the decision, okay, how do I get out of the program? It's not easy, it's not nice, it's not pretty, but when you get out of it, then you can see what came before it. And then, you know, you'll have your people who are like, hey man, I know this steak ain't real, but it tastes so good. If you put me back in the Matrix, I'll do your work for you.
I want to be rich.
Just make sure that I'm rich.
Someone
and that I'm famous. Exactly. So it's like, you know, realistically, you can't say that all cultures or even an actual culture is built on those three pillars. Because if we're talking about science, politics, and religion, if we go beyond, if we talking about Christianity, what do we got? We got like 2,000 some odd years. That's based on their timekeeping.
It's light.
Right?
Yeah.
That's
for
light.
For the earth?
If we're talking about life on earth,
Yeah.
that's light. So religion, ixnay, is out of the window. Because there was something before that, and there were people before that, right? It just has to go right out the window. Then politics, where does that, okay, even on the topic of religion, right, where does that come from? There has to be something before that gave people some sort of idea that, yeah, there's something that's higher than us on this operational, you know, existential level, because the earth was here before we got here, and the earth has been here before so many of us got here. But what created the earth? How did the earth get here? And then, you know, there are civilizations who have some of those answers, you know, that existed before the modern religions. It's plain and simple. So that cancels out all three of those things, because even politics, it's like what came before what we know as modern politics, right? There was a pharaoh. There were kingships. There still are kingships, right? There's no evidence that says that there's not still a pharaoh somewhere.
Shout out to the elders.
You know what I'm saying? So we have to be very careful in our approach to sort of trying to make these things into what our colonial minds might want them to be, right? Because those three pillars are really what would even make you say that, right? What would give you like the gumption to go ahead and be like, well, that's the basis of everything. and everything even before this modern time. That was still the basis of it. But how would you know if you haven't gone to the people who are still living on the values, taboos, and principles that were present before what you know right now?
Well, even those 3 pillars are just a copy of, you know, the real hierarchy. Because, yeah, there is hierarchy. That is true. That does exist everywhere. But, like, you know, the understanding, or the traditional understanding, is that at the top of the hierarchy is nature. And everything else fits into it. And nowadays you have... I was a late one.
I was a late one. My bad. My bad.
But it's nature, and everything fits into nature. And then nowadays you have it where, like, you know, these pillars are trying to be above nature. They're trying to say, oh, like, you know, we are greater than nature, or we can somehow manipulate nature. And that's where we're really going nowadays with art and what we're talking about with AI, you know. But at the end of the day, like, having that understanding that, you know, nature really rules above everything is really, like, how you start to get to this understanding of, like, re-indigenization and what we're really talking about here.
Yeah. And even looking at art and nature, if you want to call it art, nature will be the best artist, you know. Naturally, as a creator, you know, it's always, it's infinite in its, you know, display, and its soundscape, you know, and its aesthetic. It's masterful. The geometry, we can't replicate it to that perfection, or even that, you know, ingenuity. So, you know, even nature would even influence and become our first teacher for what art would even be.
Yeah. Wait. We need to talk about that for a second. That's a really profound point. Because that's a really profound point that he's saying right there. Because really, and this is how I started to think about art lately. Because I'm a musician, you know, I've been making art pretty much my whole life. But and I had this perspective, this Western lens, that art was this subjective thing. It was this emotional thing. It was like something that, you know, I can, you know, project upon. But at the end of the day, you're right. Art is nature. Really, like, all we're really trying to do is to replicate it or to copy it. So at the end of the day, art is objective. It's not something you can put you can. People cried when they listen to music. You know, I do sometimes too, no lie. But, you know, like, at the end of the day, like, art is just an objective, because art is just nature. And we're always trying to manipulate it. We're trying to use some sort of agenda to get what we want out of people through it. But at the end of the day, it's very simple. It's just nature.
And Angela, just to be clear, because you're saying that the earliest cultures had no politics, science, spiritual system. You know, the thing is, we probably are touching on the same point, right? We're probably, you know, sort of begging the same questions or on the same quest, even, per se. But the point that we're trying to make is that what we know now in modern times as politics, religion, or quote unquote spirituality, because it's not spiritual anymore. It's all about emotions. It's about riling people up. It's about making people think that this invisible person somewhere in the skies hears all of us at the same, and we all have access to that same one person up in the sky that is going to grant us all our wishes if we pray hard enough and we believe. What about the hierarchy? What about the hierarchy of nature that says you came from 2 parents that you have to answer to, right? And then when they go beyond this realm, and then they're in that invisible space, who's to say that they aren't the ones who report to that higher being or higher beings to say, hey, this is what my descendants are doing. So because now they're doing the right things in the material realm, I need to be able to give them this, and I'm asking for it on their behalf. And there's a dialogue that happens there. You know, the modern spirituality, or per se, doesn't have that. That's the point that we're making. I don't think that, you know, we're really speaking to different points, Angela, but you got to realize that, you know, the way that we're speaking on it is kind of removed from the colonial or, Western way of thinking about it. That's it.
That's a good point, because when you have to answer to one thing or one entity, like that's how they really get you with religion. It's like one God. It's like one president. It's like one, anything at the end of the day. But really, like, I mean, you could look back at what we know as ancient Egypt, and you can say, oh, well, there was one pharaoh. But that's like even a misrepresentation of what a pharaoh was, because at the end of the day, a pharaoh was a spiritual position. It wasn't like,
Political.
like political at the end of the day. And the pharaoh had to answer to a lot. The pharaoh wasn't just at the top, because the pharaoh had to answer to a lot of things in the non-material as well. So really, it's just like a misunderstanding of it all, and that's. That's how they get you with the one God. And
then even with what you were saying, right? Like the people will take that because of our, westernized minds and be like, oh, well, that is politics, right? Having someone that everybody has to answer to, kingships, all that kind of stuff, that is politics. How is that not politics? But like you said, that was a really good point, is that all of that is a part of a spiritual system. All of that is based on spiritual predispositions and what your bloodline, right, is supposed to be doing in order to sort of create this harmonization on earth amongst all human beings working as one sort of system, right? So yes, of course, people in different places will have different languages, will have different ways of living because of climate, because of, elevation, I don't know, different things. But the reality is, if everyone is in accordance with the same things, right, the same main principles that are about what we're all doing as humanity, then it becomes one, it really becomes one thing, right? And it's not about what the king in the West wants to do. It's about how the king in the West can form his society to be in alignment with what has come from the pharaoh, which has come from even higher places, to be able to create a harmony amongst humanity. It's not about like anybody's personal, ideals or ambitions. Exactly.
Right, but that's a good point, because when you remove spirituality from things, when you remove spirituality, when you remove your ancestors, when you remove the non-material, like that's how you get the three pillars that we have today. That's how you can get science, religion, politics. That's how you can get people to do whatever it is that they want with whatever agenda that they want, because they don't have to answer to anybody or anything, or they think they don't have to answer to anyone or anything, and then it could just be about whatever.
Yeah, for sure. But, all in all, it represents, what I would like to call like a Greco-Roman revolution against, because in the last episodes, a few episodes ago, we were talking about how, Makaru was the only real revolutionary that we've ever seen in this time, because of the way that he attacked sort of decolonizing people's minds to go back to, what all of our ancestors practiced at one point, which is what made us all great. But at some point in time, there were people who saw that, right, namely Greco-Roman civilizations, and they said, okay, well, we want it, but it's hard, right? So let's just make our own. Let's take some of it, the parts that we know are beneficial, right? Let's get a writing system. Let's learn how to farm. Let's learn how to build some structures. But the whole 77, commandments or 77 rules to have to live by to come closer to divinity. Well, if you're saying that I can build the divinity in myself with 77 commandments, then that means that there's some already in me, right? So then I'm good. And then I already have divinity in me, right? So I'm good. and then that's where they went with it. It's like, okay, well, if there's just a slight piece of it in me that I can build, then why even really build it if it's already there? If it actually is that hard, right? So then from that point, the culture altogether, or that spiritual system, becomes corrupted, and then you get things like entertainment, right? This is another form of art where the gladiators, right? It started out as just like a sort of show, right, for entertainment. Whereas in the traditional or indigenous African societies, you will have certain things that will look like a show. Like I was talking about earlier, like the dances that look like the b-boy dances, that's honoring certain deities, certain divinities at certain times, right? In time and space, right? We have an understanding that at a specific time, in a specific place, you have to honor a specific thing with maybe the dance, with maybe the drum and the music, with maybe offerings, that would be like food or things like that, in order to show an appreciation per se for that divinity and what that does for you in your everyday life, because you live in nature, right? And you technically yourself are a byproduct of that.
Right, and that's the real form of like what we're talking about with re-indigenization, because the indigenous, like they don't, what they do, like, there'll be like griots that will come to the villages and they'll be playing the drums and they'll be like teaching and talking about like specific things or specific divinities of the week or specific things that you may need, and they'll be playing the drums and they'll have like a specific tempo and all of that. And they're not doing this for a lifestyle. For a vibe.
Well, it is a lifestyle, but it's not but
the way we perceive the musician or the lifestyle that we live, the colonized lifestyle that we live in the West, they ain't doing it for a Ferrari. They're doing it because it's like maybe it was in their bloodline and maybe they're channeling something and they're doing it for a purpose like that's bigger and greater than themselves.
And don't get us wrong, like, having things in life is cool. Abundance is great, but are you achieving that abundance through actually living through a principled life, and things that are beyond you are sort of bringing things into your life because of how much you've devoted yourself to those things, rather than you kind of taking it off the backs of other people, knowing or unknowing, right? Because like you were saying earlier, like the kid Didi Osama, the record label execs are paying him to fund their companies, right? Which then just funds their other agendas that they have. I don't know how many of y'all have seen the I think it was Busy Bone from the Bone Thugs and Harmony. He talked about how like the prison industrial complex was tied to the music industry, in a big way in the early 90s, where they were just like, they straight up had a meeting with them, and it was like, yo, if y'all make this kind of music, like, we'll give you even more money than what you expected. But if not, then, we're not going to push your music. And it's just that simple, because they want, specific people in the prisons and, yada, yada. They have certain agendas for it.
I want to go back to what you said about the Greeks, right? And when you were talking, it seemed like the first form of artistic interpretation of a culture is like, oh, this is my interpretation. This is how I'm going to paint it. This is how I'm going to push it forward. And then it goes all the way to gladiators. It goes all the way to like, these barbaric expressions.
And even before that, it started with the gods.
Right. And like in their cosmogony,
and they were like eating their, like Zeus was like eating his children.
Right.
Yeah, it was like he was like humans trying to like battle the gods and like defeat their father, and I was like, what's wrong? But that's where it really, it seems to really have gone left. And going back to what you said about agendas, and the agendas of the modern culture and modern entertainment. Previously, it was about what is the purpose and how does this fit into the cohesion of our community and culture. And the culture was already spiritually imbued to begin with. So the art had to be a part of the aesthetic, or whatever you want to call art now, had to fit into the spiritual culture that already existed. So it amplified the culture, amplified the goal of the community, which was elevation or evolution or spiritual, or harmonizing with nature and these types of things. So now we find ourselves constantly trying to reinvent or constantly trying to find a new expression or find a new way of, being seen or being heard, because we don't have the roots of the spirituality that our ancestors had before. So we're trying to reclaim something. It seems like we're trying to find something that we lost through the art, but the culture itself gave us the art to begin with.
Yeah.
Dang.
Even Naba Irita, again, plugging I Never Knew TV on YouTube. Naba Irita did an interview in one of the parts of, they broke the interview up into parts, and one of the parts he was talking about masks, and how African masks they're not art, right? And they're actual tools that are used for specific spiritual purposes, but because of the commodification, of
Colonization.
bars.
Let's just be real. Let's just be real. We gotta be real about it, though. That's really what it is. It's like, I would love to have this African, Karen's out there like, I would love this African fresco. What's the guy's name from The
Simpsons? He sounds like the guy from The Simpsons.
But that's what it is at the end of the day. I wasn't even gonna bring this up, but I've been thinking about it a lot. And me and Kenibashu were talking in the car a couple of weeks ago. We were at an International African Arts Festival. Shout out International African Arts Festival. We lit that place up. But shout out to the man with the sign. If anyone out there is offended,
Comedic man with a sign on Instagram.
Let's have a conversation at the end of the day. But we were talking in the car, and we were talking about like traditional culture, and we were talking specifically about polygamy. And I wasn't gonna bring this up, but I've been thinking about it a lot. And when we think about polygamy, like our understanding of polygamy in the modern culture is like those documentaries of Mormons, like abusing women.
I'm not familiar. Please fill me in.
There's just, I'm sure you guys have heard about it before, but in Mormon cultures, they have a lot of wives, and they're known to like marry very young women, and evidently there's been a lot of abuse, that's just the way that it's been painted. So our understanding of polygamy really like derives from that, or that it's like chauvinistic, or that it has to do with the man. Because the thing is, in the Western culture, is like polygamy is it's sexualized, but like the understanding that the traditions have about polygamy is really about family, and at the end of the day, polygamy is about the children and taking care of the children. And the only reason, and the thing is, in traditional culture, and I have to bring up this context because polygamy is so sensitive.
Yeah, it is.
Even when we were learning about it in our initiation, it's just a very sensitive topic. It's very difficult to talk about it because we're so used to monogamy, even though we see how monogamy fails, even though from time after time, like our parents or grandparents, actually our grandparents might have had it right, because they might still be together because they still have a little bit of that tradition. But our parents, or like people that we know, like monogamy just fails time after time, right? But really, like polygamy was really about the family, and even the way that like a man can have another wife is really based on like the first wife. The first wife will decide, you need another wife, because maybe like we have a lot of children, maybe we need more help around the house, because really it was all based around family at the end of the day. Like when you make it about anything else, that's where it kind of gets misconstrued, and that's how our understanding of polygamy gets misconstrued. So then when we take that back to art even, and we're talking about art, and we're talking about how there are so many love songs, right? And so many like, baby this and baby that, and like I love you this and I love you that.
Sidebar, I actually watched a documentary about how like a lot of Christian musicians turned into secular musicians. All you have to do is take a song that talks about God and take the word God and change it into baby. And then it becomes a secular sexual song.
Right, exactly. But here, the thing is like, you know, all of these songs and everything that were pushed, like, there's an agenda behind it. There's like, oh, I love you this, I love you that. Like, even in traditional culture, they don't use the word love. Like, love is not even a word. It's like, I see you. There's like a difference, because it's really like, love is like ephemeral. Like, love comes and goes. Like, the love you have with someone now may not be the same love you have in 5 years, in 10 years. You know, it's just a word at the end of the day, you know.
But is it just a word, or is it like in the actual?
Sure.
You know, what you're saying is very important though, because it is speaking to a lot of what colonization itself, going back to those Greco-Roman times, has sort of offered, you know, the world at large. Because like I was saying, it started with the gods, right? You have Wissa, Heru, and Aishat that sort of form they form a trinity, right? And then you go from that, and then Christianity ends up having the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Right.
And where's the woman?
Where's the mom?
You know? So automatically you've cut one part out of, you know, a holy trinity, and now you have to deal with a society that ends up becoming sort of patriarchal, you know, and the views toward anything that resembles that, where a man does specific things in the society, right? And then it turns into the hate against polygamy, because...
Or the hate against men.
Exactly, right. So then it becomes that, because now they're not viewing the family as a spiritual principle.
Right.
Rather than sensationalizing sex itself. And then the child is just like it's just like a byproduct. It's just like whatever comes from it. Like, I wasn't trying to do that, but it's optional. You know, so then you have all of these other corruptions and degradations that come from it, where now, yes, you will have a bunch of women saying that they want a good partner. Just one, right? Good partner. But how can he stand up to the criteria now that you have for what that good partner is supposed to look like,
right,
when none of your approach is about anything more than your pleasures,
right,
than what you want to feel like, what you want this to look like to someone else, rather than it being about a spiritual principle of like a trinity actually being present in your life, that gives you some sort of an understanding of like going beyond just all of these physical things in this physical life. What's beyond that?
Right. Because if you can get rid of the father, if you can get rid of the mother, if you can get rid of the family, then you can get to the individual. Then it's very easy. But when you have a large family, when you have the culture, when you have the ethics, the tradition, the values, the taboos, it is very difficult to penetrate the family. It is very difficult to get to the individual. And that's the thing. And let's not mistake this. There is no such thing as patriarchy. That's a bunch of bullshit. It's about understanding nature, and that's all it is. Animals understand their nature. They understand nature. They know how to fit into it. But we don't. We like to go against genders. Like, we like to hate on women. We like to hate on men. They have us tied up against each other. They have us in a deadlock. Oh, men ain't shit, or women ain't shit, or like whatever it is. But at the end of the day, if we all understood what our nature is, then it would be all said and done. And that's something that's what re-indigenization is. Like, there are rules, there are ethics, there's a hierarchy in traditional culture. They have an understanding of certain things. There are certain things that men do. There are certain things that women do. There are certain things that men are stronger at. There are certain things that women are stronger at. And they understand those things. And because they have an understanding of that, that's why their traditions and cultures have lasted for hundreds of thousands of years. And yet we come in as a very young civilization, 300, 400, 500 years, this Western ideology, and then we try to assert ourselves onto this culture to, these indigenous ways. You know, when we've only lasted a couple hundred years, and we're not going to last that long the way we are. You looked out the world nowadays.
Yeah.
You look at what they're teaching our children nowadays. Like, they're trying to get us, and they're very good at it.
Yeah. The Western society is almost like, you know, a child going into a temple for the first time and not knowing what anything is, and it's just like, oh, what's this? You know, this is cool. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna put it over here now, not knowing that you're disrupting the entire fabric or foundation of that temple.
Yeah.
And that's how the modern system is for children. Ultimately, when it comes to this, our own education, our spiritual cultivation, our understanding of nature. And we have the entitlement or the arrogance to think that, oh, we know what's best. We know, you know, how they should function. Going back to your story about South Africa, like, oh, they need a square house. We need to put walls here, 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 and here. And then one day they'll understand why this is better.
Right.
But even going back to what you're saying about, you know, Haru, Aishat, Wisser, you know, Holy Trinities and these types of things, like even we'll see the art, you know, we'll see it on the pyramids, we'll see like the hieroglyphs, we'll see these images, and like that was the culture. That was the foundation. It was even in what we see as art. Those masks, they weren't just masks. They were a way for channeling, you know, for mediumship. So everything that we see as art carries these exact origins, these cultures, the family values, how we understand our evolution and our goal as humanity, our roles within that goal. What is a man's place? What is a woman's place? You have the Ankh. You have all these different symbols and these representations that really are more than just, oh, that looks dope. Oh, that's cool. Like, how they build that? The pyramid, is that, how many feet tall is it? And how many stones did it take to make it? It wasn't about that. It had a deep cultural context and value for everyone in humanity at some point. So now it's like, how do we return back to that? How do we remember what that is? How do we reclaim that? And I think the first, and then it goes back to the whole decolonization, re-indigenization, of course. But it's a long journey, to be honest.
Just to speak to some of the comments real quick, RGB Guapo says nature produces diverse expressions, but all in all is organized.
Yeah.
I can agree to that. Sure.
Facts. Add one thing to that.
Huh?
Just one point to that.
Yeah.
That's the power of nature's creativity, right? Or genius, or manifestation, is that everything has a reason for being here. Everything has a place. Otherwise, it wouldn't be here. There's a purpose for it. So that's why it's important for us not to impose our purpose on nature and think that we know what's better for it, when it already is intelligent and is curating. It's orderly. It's already in order and curating and becoming in a certain order.
There's a chair downstairs, a wooden chair, if you want. Yeah.
So, there was one guy who said a griot is a hereditary role. I understand what you're saying with that. That does make sense, you know, because a griot would be somebody who sings songs and plays an instrument and tells history through those songs, right? Can really even give people like readings, like be able to look at a person and play a song that speaks to who that person is and what they need to do in their lives. You know, that's a real thing, but that takes initiation. You know, that takes culture. That takes a group of people to actually be invested in something that's beyond the physical expression of the art itself. It's not just about the playing of the instrument or the singing of the song. It's about going far beyond that to actually express some sort of a principle, right? And the blood that's in your veins has given you the power to be able to do that, you know. So what's this guy's name? Zoo221 definitely understood.
Yeah, and every beat has a language. Every drum pattern has a language, and you can even see it in the culture. Like certain people, I'm not going to give it away, but certain people react to certain beats and drum patterns. And I'm not even saying like in terms of color or anything. I'm saying in terms of like, you know, their spiritual predisposition, like what they come with, like will react to certain things in a certain way, and you'll see it in the culture, and you know, it's interesting.
Yeah,
it's real.
Angela was also saying the problem is that when it comes to family structures, we're in this either or mode. Is there some reason that there isn't room for many family systems. Everybody don't want polygamy.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, that's
there's
just
there's a place for everything. I mean, first is honesty, understanding, where you're at. Not every man is going to be polygamous because it's a big responsibility, first of all. Like, are you doing, like why is it happening? What's the purpose, the goal behind it again?
Right.
Do you just want more women? You want more sex? What is it?
Right.
And can you even handle more than one wife? Financially, spiritually, are you stable enough to handle that situation? On the wives, is there a harmony within that unit? These are realities that have to be considered. So even thinking about modern man or modern woman in America, it's unlikely that many of us or any of us are really prepared for that type of a relationship. It's work, and it takes culture, and it takes a goal, and it takes discipline, and it takes customs, culture, to make it a successful endeavor. And so it's not that you can't be monogamous, that it's bad to be monogamous, but it's important to acknowledge the value and why polygamy was practiced for thousands of years, and it's still being practiced right now in parts of the world.
Right. Yeah. I mean, everybody won't want it. That's the point.
Or they ain't ready.
But that's also sort of that agent of colonialism, sort of pulling and tweaking you just a little bit, just to say, fight against that, because I don't want that. But is it really about what you want, right? Because maybe I don't want to be polygamous myself, right, as a man.
Right.
But then what if I come from a culture or a family, a tribe, where my father's for years and years and years have been practicing polygamy, and then there comes a time. There was a story once that I heard where there was a young boy, he was growing into adulthood, and there came a time where a pact was made between two families, right, before he was even born, that these two bloodlines would come together at some point. And then they just brought him his wife one day. Like, they just brought him a new wife. There's like the celebration, there's the cultural ways that it happens. But it's like beyond what I may want in a specific situation. Does it make sense logically?
Right.
On the spiritual sense, like, does it make sense logically to do this for the benefit of me, myself, my descendants, and those who will come after them, right? And the community, the society at large, does it benefit all of those things? Because then shouldn't it trump what I want?
Yeah. I was on Instagram, and there was this graph of like who has the highest IQ in the world, and it was like showing like Africa and how Africa has like what they consider the lowest IQ, and then how like Europe is considered to have like the highest IQ. But what is like IQ a measure of at the end of the day? Like, Oppenheimer is like a big film right now, and like they're saying, oh, he was a genius. He discovered, at these atoms that if you, manipulated them a certain way, you can cause like some sort of like, explosion. And people are like, oh, well, he was a genius, you know what I mean? Like, because he was able to, discover.
He does the
Genius.
imitation of like the colonial mind.
But he was able to like, but that's the thing is like, we think we consider people intelligent without really questioning like who created the parameter for intelligence, because is intelligence like causing destruction and killing millions of people, but because you are qualified, and because it might seem difficult, then that is like the measure of your intelligence? Or is intelligence raising 10 kids in a family, in a village, and making sure that they end up to be good children, and to grow up and to be strong adults and to take care of their children? Like, what is really the measure of what we consider intelligence?
Well, we're getting up to the 2-hour mark, so we're gonna end soon. But I'm not cutting you off, Ibtehuti. You stay here by yourself and drop bombs all night, bro, because you've been on fire tonight. I can't deny it.
Facts.
But
It's the Guinness.
I want to tell a short story that actually Master Naba, just in the vein of what Ibtehuti was talking about just now, you know, about who gets to deem certain things intelligent, who gets to deem certain people to be geniuses, and what is genius really defined by. So our master Nebnabala Musa Moradinibig in the New York lecture that we have on Vimeo, shout out to the Vimeo page. You can find it on risingfirefly.org and go to the video section. In the New York lecture, he tells a story about a cat, right? And there's a cat that wants some fish. So the cat is like, well, I don't know how to fish with like a fishing pole, but I want some fish. So he sits and he thinks, and he's like, am I gonna do this? So the cat goes to the river, right? He stands on the bank of the river, and he sees the fish swimming by, and the cat says, hey, you there. You fishes. Stop, wait. I bet you that you are not strong enough and you're not smart enough to be able to jump on this rock right here in front of me. And, you know, the smart fishes, the intelligent fish, they look at the cat, they look at the rock, and they say, why would I do that? I'm not doing that. And they swim up, and they continue swimming down the river. But eventually, right, the logic of the cat says, there has to be some dumb fish in this river, right? So along comes, you know, those fish, and the cat ends up walking away with a basket full of fish, right? Because there has to be the dumb fish in there that decides that, okay, this cat's quotient of my intelligence, right? The IQ of this cat. He's trying to get me to measure my intelligence as a fish up against his as a cat. I'm a fish. I know water. I know how to swim in water. I know how to go deep in water. I know how to go to the surface. I know how to breathe in water. This is my realm. I do this. But the cat can't get it. Obviously, he's not in the water with me right now, and that's why he needs me to jump on the rock. So our intelligences are just different. But that's the situation that we find ourselves in with something like, you know, defining colonially who gets to tell us what genius is or what being intelligent is really about. Because you can end up fighting a fight that has nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
Right? Now we find ourselves in the colonial institutions, in their colleges, and, you know, their high schools and yada yada, in their institutions as far as like the businesses and things like that, trying to prove ourselves to be intelligent based on their rubric.
To have a seat at the table.
To have a seat at the table of what? Of that degeneration, of that destruction, of all of the things that we know are wrong with the world, that we know are coming from the participation in those exact things, but somehow we try to generalize this idea of decolonization through these means of the arts, through these means of putting our fist up at a rally, right? Those forms of art that are so beautiful to so many people, but how much of it is really expressing the intelligence that your ancestors had that would actually make you a better person, that would actually give you some spiritual, energetic, and real physical standing in this world.
Or that actually has a goal behind it that's not based in this culture. Because even when you get emotional,
that one felt good.
Society wins. When you scream, when you yell, when you say F this person or F this color or whatever it is that, you know, you feel like you need to say and you feel is like really like deep in your heart, it's like society wins because society wants to keep us apart. Society doesn't want us in the same room, you know, because then society doesn't, you know, then we can't figure out how to work together.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's real. And going back to even what you were saying, Kenibashu, it's like we all feel so often in this society that, we're special, that I'm smart enough, like I'm different, I'm more intelligent than the last generation. They didn't have what it took, but we have what it takes, because we're evolving each generation.
Exactly.
And that arrogance gets us repeating the same things that they did. And unknowingly, we think we're moving forward because it looks different on the surface.
And you end up being that fish that's on the bank of the river that's like, hey, well, I'm strong enough to watch this. Watch this. Bet. You saying I can't do it? You saying that I'm not good enough? Okay, bet. I'll show you that I'm good enough at your challenge. And then you end up jumping on the rock and the fish walks away. I mean, the cat walks away with exactly what they wanted.
And that's the 20-something-year-olds that are listening to the type of music that the industry is feeding them. That's the type of people, you know what I mean? Like when you're in your 20s, when you're in your teens, it's like the height of like, like you're sexual, you feel like really strong and like you feel like unbreakable and like you could do anything.
Very vital and vibrant.
Yeah, and that's like that you're really getting fed by the industry, like spoon-fed all these things that they're trying to, this agenda that they're trying to keep, and you're eating it up because you feel like, you could do the most. You feel like, you could easily be riled up and like you feel strong enough and, my mom doesn't know shit. My dad doesn't know shit. Like I know better than them and I am better than them.
So a message to all artists or creatives out there. It's, with that being said, pay attention to where your inspiration is coming from. Like, where are you drawing that inspiration from? Because we're getting it from somewhere. We're copying something. You know what I mean? Are you copying the person who copied it from that person? Like, where is it coming from? Is it coming from your traditions? Is it coming from, Lil Uzi? And then where did he get it from? Did he get it from Lil Wayne? Where Lil Wayne get it from?
Lil Wayne kissed,
I mean, I'm not going to go there. But
he's kissing his father.
Pay attention to that.
It's an evil world we live in.
Well, there may be something to that, looking at the world now. But yeah, look at your inspirations and really see what you're creating or what you're producing. What is it really for? What is it informing? And what is it informing someone who's watching that or taking that in to do next? Because then you might become someone else's inspiration as well. So take that accountability and that responsibility with your work, with your arts, if you're going to do it, to not mislead the next generation.
And really on that point, it's like when you come to terms with the fact that you are an agent of this system, no matter who you are an agent of this system. That is like the first step when it comes to re-indigenization, realizing that no matter who you are Agent Smith, and that they can take your body and take your spirit and all of those things and manipulate it and flip it around and do whatever they want with you.
If you jump on the rock. This has been another episode of the Gated Gates podcast. Before we go, a few things we just got to drop. So I want to first give a shout out to everybody that was in the comments, expressing their opinions and asking the questions. Kim Warrior, DeMarcus, Angela Rester, Matt Ruta,
Come on now.
RGB Guapo.
That's a rap name for sure.
He's definitely Zoo221, Stones TV, Kaja Zaneeman chimed in from all the way in Jamaica. Shout out to my brother, Medicata. I think that's it. So yeah, we appreciate it. And if you guys really are interested in furthering your education or even becoming initiates, please do come out. The address for the Fort Lee Temple is 1506 Anderson Avenue, Fort Lee, New Jersey. You can give us a call at 973-373-7806 anytime. We're always here to answer any questions that you have. The doors of initiation will be opening on September 3rd.
Boom.
So
Drop the
please
bomb.
do come through.
September 3rd.
If you have any questions before that about what that's going to be like, when the doors of initiation do open, please do call, please do come through. The doors are always open. So a few events that we have going on that are coming up. Taj, make sure that it's on the screen. We have the Newark Museum of Art on August 12th.
That's a big one.
Yeah, it's a really big one. I should have said that one last. But
Speaking of art.
Speaking of art, right? On the 12th, we'll be there, and there will be
I think it's from 1 to 3.
Yeah, from 1 to 3 p.m. 49 Washington Street, Newark, New Jersey, 07102. You can get the events on the tickets, on Eventbrite. Just look up the Newark Museum of Art. So yeah, that's going to be a really interesting event because there's let's just say one of the big dogs, right, is probably going to be there.
Big dogs.
Letting you know exactly what these artifacts are that this museum has, where they came from, what they're about, maybe even how they got there. So this is, again, as somebody from Newark, this is going to be like a privilege and an honor to really be able to see this done in a museum that, I've been to as a kid. It's honestly life-changing to be able to have access to that kind of knowledge. So it's something you don't want to miss. Come out to the Newark Museum of Art, August 12th, 1 to 3 p.m. A few days after that, we're going to have One Love Music Fest on the 19th. That's from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. at Military Park. That's 51 Park Place in Newark, New Jersey. Please come check us out. We'll be vending there. We'll have all of the publications. We got the new philosophy podium.
Come find us.
We'll have some Saz hot sauce so you can get you some. You were supposed to do it on.
Get you some.
You wasn't
Get
ready.
you some.
And then we have Cielo Mystic happening the same day. I'm not sure of the location.
It's in Union, New Jersey, but we'll be posting about it shortly.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll be vending there as well.
It should be on the screen if Taj is doing his job correctly. I don't know. He looks like he's not. He's looking. We'll figure it out. But yeah, kepta-nj.org. You can see all of the upcoming events on our website. The herbcenter.org. That's where you can get in touch about the MTOM classes.
We also have an event at Mindful Matters.
Yeah.
Do you remember what date that is?
August 20.
Are we bringing up stuff that y'all don't know?
Well, that'll be on the website. So
Yeah, it'll be on the website.
It'll be on the website.
Check out the website.
Check out the website. So again, let me not forget, Kafra. Yeah, my bad. Let me not forget to mention Ancosta Natural Healing. That's anhlife.org. If you're having any sort of health problems or anything like that, you can reach out, anhlife.org. Again, am I missing anything? risingfirefly.org.
Yeah. Philosophy Podium, get you one of these, a new edition.
Third edition just dropped.
I think that's it. So again, this has been another episode of the Gator Gates podcast. We appreciate you. Thank you for tuning in. And until the next time, Idi Haru.
Idi Haru.
Idi Haru.